and Matt Savage. I thank you guys for being here today. We're going to do something a little different. I would like to take the time to appreciate my guest, Elmar. He comes from the other side of the world. He's traveled here to the States, and this man have a resume that is extremely, extremely extensive. He's a physicist by trade and career, but he obviously have taken the opportunity to indulge in some of life's more creative avenues. And I think that he's become extremely proficient, and one that I want to spend as much time as he's willing to allow this morning and just soak it up. Elmar, if you don't mind, just dive right in. See what we want to.
Yeah, sure. It's my pleasure to be here, and it was a little bit difficult to find a house because it's my cabin, because it's on a ranch here in northern Oklahoma, but I finally made it, and so we have a cup of coffee here and talk a little bit about this and that. Yes, I come from over the Atlantic Ocean. Started my trip in Buffalo, New York, where my godmother is living. She's 90. She's of German descent. So her parents emigrated here during the Great Depression years.
Wow.
She was born in the United States, but always has been attached to my family. She's a cousin of my father, and to me as a godson. So from there, I got a rental car and traveled out west through Bloomington, Indiana, where I also made other friends. It's a nice, small university town. The University of Indiana does a lot of good things for that city.
Yes, great school, great school.
So good music school and all other. It's a real. I love it. I've been there for the third time, and I always try to stop by. Then I went through Branson, Missouri, into Oklahoma, where I have been for just 1 week.
So basically, he found my property here on Airbnb, and it seemed to be quite the stay. So how do you like your stay thus far?
Oh, it's excellent. The twilight colors, when I came late, so the sun already had set, but it was a spectacular view to see the twilight sky in the west, and then the moon was rising.
Wow.
Total calmness, quiet.
Yes.
And and I have a small cabin with all the amenities that I need, so it's a perfect stay here, and I only can recommend it to any other person. And unfortunately, I will have to leave tomorrow because I have to go back east and have to be in Buffalo again on October 17th. It's now the 8th, today. So I have 11 days to travel back, which should be fine, yeah.
So in the midst of Elmar's travels in Oklahoma, he's taken some time to enjoy the music at the Gill Music Festival. It's a extremely well-known music venue, and could you tell a little bit about?
Yeah, definitely. Well, first of all, I stopped by overnight in Tulsa, Oklahoma, and picked up my banjo. I can show later. There's a small
amazing banjo, guys. Absolutely phenomenal.
It has been my retirement. It has been my retirement present. So yeah, maybe I'll show it right away.
Yeah, it's great.
So. The company's name is Bischlein.
Wow.
And well, this is just banjo players tend to be fancy as in contrast to guitar players. The usual guitar would be just plain and still be good.
Yes.
But with banjos, people like to have nice resonators, nice inlays. So this is the back of my banjo.
Could you explain some of this?
Yes. It is showing the moonrise over an observatory in Mexico, the National Observatory in Mexico. I had been there in January for the total lunar eclipse, doing photometry on that event. This has been my scientific pastime during the last 12 years. I'm a physicist. So this is the motif derived from photos from there, the rising moon. And this banjo has been a retirement present to myself from me. So it got to be beautiful.
So Elmar doesn't know this about me, but he is going to soon learn that that his passion, like he explained, he just went down to Mexico and to see the lunar eclipse. We're going to dive into that experience into great detail. He's a physicist. He's a learned individual and a man of great well-read.
Well, don't flatter me too much. But, yeah, I worked 39 years, in my profession. So yeah,
that's fantastic.
That was a good time, yeah.
So I would like to at the point we can get a point and definitely listen to the fantastic banjo you was playing. That song earlier today, I think that it was absolutely
I tried.
phenomenal.
Yeah, it's
if you don't mind, could you let us hear it?
It's an old time tune called Black.
Is this a cape on it? Is this a
yeah, that's a cape, but not used. Wow. But
okay.
Yeah, so yeah, this is all this banjo. Before I try to play, it's always a difficult life, but has been manufactured by Rob Bischlein in Tulsa, Oklahoma, which I wholeheartedly can recommend to any fledgling banjo player. He did such an excellent job.
This is not normal in banjos, right?
No, this is a traditional 5-string banjo. This is shortened. It's a drone string. It's a G, so which already drones with the other ones. So that's quite normal. That's a regular American 5-string banjo. Like it was done in the early 1900s. No, 1840 something. That's when the banjo came, of course, from Africa. It's a black man's instrument. Has been featured in minstrel shows, but also got adopted by hillbillies for old time and bluegrass music. So I try to play an old time piece.
Play us an old time piece. One from the soul. Soul is where the banjo originated from.
This is an old-timey sound. Normally, that banjo is used for 3-finger style of picking, which is the most favorite type of playing in bluegrass. But when being in a cabin like here, I like to have these melodic or sounds. Let me try another one. Give it another try. Yes, it's a little bit rusty. It's called a tune. This tune is called John Lover's Gone, and it's also deriving from Appalachia. That's where this type of music.
Yeah, absolutely. Here's something cool about an InTune banjo. When it's in tune, everything that you pick it sounds good. So
I'll try to get it into a regular tuning. It's G tuning, an open G.
So I take it that these are planets on the frets?
These are stars, yeah.
Stars and planets.
This model is called the Midnight Moon model. It's a standard model from Rob Bischlein, but I had it customized. Instead of the shiny brass metal, I had him use aluminum powder coated in black. Which makes it lighter for once. It also doesn't have a metal tone ring, but it has a maple tone ring, and I'm really amazed at how good that sounds too. And it should become even better with age, because wood always gets better.
Absolutely,
with age.
absolutely.
It's a very lightweight thing. It only weighs 7 pounds, whereas a regular banjo could easily have 10, 11, 12 pounds. And so you're not getting younger. So this is, my last thing would be. Rusty. Not in tune also. Let's try again. Now I'm getting at it. Yeah.
Oh, it sounds great.
So
thank you.
Cripple Creek.
Thank you. Thank you.
Well, I still have to get back to banjo playing. I was playing mandolin in the last 12 years, mostly. So I didn't bring one here.
Okay.
So I will now be returning to the banjo, because the banjo is a true American instrument. And I always loved it. I'm a fan of bluegrass music for most of my life, but I started with classic country music.
Wow.
Nashville, the classic Nashville
Tennessee.
sound of the 60s.
That's right.
Chet Atkins, and so Loretta Lynn.
That's right.
All the famous singers. And it's now back. I just bought the Ken Burns series.
Okay.
The 8 country music history DVDs.
Cool.
I'm looking forward to look at them. And I think they will do a good job in bringing back country to more of a recognition here, because it has been going down a little bit because of all the crooning and the commercialization.
Well, commercialization changes it to whatever sells. They don't. It doesn't. It isn't.
It's actually people's music, and that's where it should stay. And hopefully, it will be coming back. As Matt said, I visited, after picking up my banjo, the Guthrie Bluegrass Festival, and I will tell a little bit about that in a minute. Yeah.
Well, Elmar, a couple of things I wanted to see if we can, scratch the surface on and dive into on some of your passions is the time you've spent as a physicist and your research on the lunar eclipses. What is one of the most common? Well, what brought you into wanting to be a physicist, but then wanting to study the astrology of the universe? What from your soul?
I grew up in the age of rocket scientists. In the 60s, it was all about spacefaring. Astronaut Werner von Braun, the lunar landing. I was 14, 50 years ago. 15. I was 15 at the time. I'm now 65, and I stayed up late. It was 3:56 a.m. in Germany when they got out of the lunar module and made the first steps on the moon. Armstrong and Aldrin. So, I also grew up in a small town in Germany, which is well known for producing the Leica cameras. The town's name is Wetzlar. In Wetzlar, the famous Leica camera has been invented 100 years ago. And so I knew always neighbors who were working in industry, be it the optical industry. We also had a steel mill. We still have it in that town. So I always was a technically minded guy, but motivated for astronomy, I got by the lunar expeditions, so to speak. Well, and then I was good in school in science, and then I had the option to also do chemistry. Then I decided to study physics, and well, got into atomic physics as a PhD using extreme EU ultraviolet radiation in Hamburg, Hamburg University, and
using ultraviolet radiation.
Yeah, extreme vacuum ultraviolet. This radiation only propagates in the vacuum, so you have to evacuate the whole apparatus. The whole optics, the whole beam line needs to be ultra high vacuum, because this radiation, it's also sometimes called soft X-ray. It's very, very short wavelengths. It's about 1/10 of the wavelengths of visible light only. So it cannot be seen, but it's very intensive and energetic and can be used for probing the inner shells of atoms. So it has nothing to do with nuclear physics. It has just the electrons in the atoms, atomic physics, basic science. And but it also used optics. So I was always an optics person, doing spectra and so on.
Any of that technology?
So much about my training, yeah.
Is any of that technology currently used today in the Hydra Collider? Because it's breaking down and analyzing the atoms.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. Well, we were working at a storage ring, but we were using a fall off of the circulating electrons, which were used for collisions in elementary particle physics. But when relativistic electrons, meaning that they almost go around at the speed of light, then they will send off light. Like the mud from a rotating wheel will be thrown away tangentially, and this light is very short, is very intensive, and this is so-called synchrotron radiation. We used that, but not the electrons. The electrons were used by our colleagues doing experiments on elementary particles. So it was sort of a spin. It is sort of a spin-off, but synchrotron radiation is in high demand these days. There's many laboratories. In Stanford there's one, in Wisconsin has one. So there's different laboratories also in the United States where synchrotron radiation is used. And it's mostly for basic science, but for better understanding of chemical reactions. And so after all, it does good things to our forthcoming, I would say. So, but even if it was basic science that I did.
Where do you find your passions in that field? Is it more health and learning about the what are your passions?
Well, I just love to understand how nature is working. The inner workings of nature, be it in the atoms or be it in the universe. And because that's what we are set, we live in what is called medio world, which is in the middle between the micro world of the atoms and the macro world of the universe. And so we are right in the middle of things, and we can look in both directions. And so it's just for wanting to understand what keeps the world together. So this is.
Would you allow me to dive as deep as I would like?
Sure.
Okay. Do you believe in God? Who is God to you?
I have to admit that I have a problem with that, because during the scientific age, I would carefully say God has been pushed backwards all the time. It was, well, in the first place, maybe people thought he might be sitting in the clouds. I don't want to offend anyone, but and then now it ever got more, let's say, remote. So as many scientists, I know there are scientists that definitely believe in God for better, but I would have to say I opted out. So that's not my. But I am a strong advocate of living by moral standards, and this should also be observed by scientists. So yeah, that's my 10 cents about that topic.
Let me ask you a few more questions, if you don't mind. So for a man who is as well read as you, and who have experienced what you have experienced, and in this world, have you, a person who researches the universe as a whole comprehensively, have you ever had a spiritual experience? Not to state what you think I'm asking, just from what you would interpret that question as. Would you say that you've ever had a spiritual experience, or an experience that you cannot explain? And if you don't mind, let's tell us a story. Like, for example, as a kid, I remember one time, they call them sleep paralysis now. I remember when, I have actually experienced what is known as sleep paralysis now, many times, or what is known as night terrors, or, you can explain it.
Okay. Well, there are a few incidents that you get thinking about. Some of them are what is called the déjà vu experiences, that you dream. It's a French word, déjà vu means already seen.
Sure.
That you dream something and then wake up and find that you just you dream something, and then later in broad daylight you come back and say, oh, I have seen that in a dream already. So that happens every once in a while.
Some call that a glitch in the matrix.
Yeah, something like that. So that happened also when my grandmother on the mother's side died. I think at night, even being far away in Germany, I thought I heard something, a scream or some sound, So that's still in my head, and well, it could be chance, whatever.
Sure.
You have, sometimes you have a bad sleep, but well, the coincidence was still striking. So of course, not everything is going to be explained. Feelings, love, hate. Are nothing to be explained by science. Well, psychologists try to do that, but I would say there's still many open questions here.
So when you said, going back to when you said that you thought that you heard your grandmother or mother,
was
your grandmother,
yes, grandmother.
Your grandmother, and you said it could have been her or it could not have been her. How did you feel at that moment? Was it just a voice, or was it also a presence?
I couldn't say. It's quite a while back, and I was young then. I was in my late 20s. So it only later then my mother called me on during the day and said that her mother had passed away. So, and then I flashed back and said, oh yes, I heard something at night.
That happened. That exact thing happened when my actual mother passed away.
Yeah.
So my mother was sick in the hospital, and the day of her passing away, I actually had a vision of her, almost as if she visited me. And then I received a phone call early that morning from my oldest sister, letting me know that my mother had passed away. And I said, and my response to her is, I know. So it was weird, because you were like, I know that already happened, because she came to me. She didn't tell me she was passing away, but you knew the circumstances of the situation.
So I think if you're really strongly bonded to a person like your mother or grandparents, like was the case in my case, I was always there on their farm. My grandparents on the mother's side had a small farm, and we always spent the vacations there as children. So I was quite closely attached, and she was a very good person. So I think, that goes with it, so that you are connected somehow.
So you've spent your life studying energy,
Well, yeah, sort of, yeah. Energy spectra, yeah, that's all about light of different colors, which goes with the energy, yes.
What would you say we are
As human beings?
as human beings, right? Because you hear it's social signs that we project an energy. Even when you picked up the instrument, a beautiful sound to the ear is a tone.
Yeah.
Right. But that tone is on a frequency.
Yes. Yeah.
Right. And there's a settling frequency. There's a frequency. You spoke of anger and hate. Hate is also a frequency.
Sure, yeah.
This test has been conducted with water drops and tears even.
Okay.
So what would I'm a young man. So these are questions that I literally have always asked. So I feel like I have the opportunity to ask someone who has read and studied in their own way. You've lived twice the amount of time as I have. What? Sorry. I should throw that one. What would you say we are outside of the superficial, where we're blood and we have, we're made up of carbon and all that good stuff.
Sure, yeah.
What are we outside of that makeup?
Well, we are not animals, I hope so. No, for sure. Well, actually, we don't know. What do the animals? I think animals have feelings too, and of course, if you look at dogs attending to human beings, but still there's something different. So in at some point in history, it must have made a click, and then there was man, and so it still fascinates me. I also, when teaching, because after my scientific career, I went to teach for the last 25 years at a small university in Heidelberg, Germany. So I always had contact with young people and asking some of them, even not openly, but it's in their heads. They want to grasp and understand the world. So I also strayed a little bit out of my field and taught about history of technology, how the important inventions have been made, starting with the wheel and all the other stuff until modern times. So there's something definitely special about men or mankind, and it is not something which is materialistic. I have to say that it's something in spiritual, as you said. So because we have very intelligent animals like dolphins, maybe even in principle more intelligent than men, but somehow they still cannot make use of it. So, but man made good use and bad use, of course, we all know that, and that's a big discussion these days.
So in all the books you've read, you made a statement that there was a time where it must have just clicked for a human, right? Human Homosapien is as a subset. So Homo sapien is just a subset. So that's what we would call ourselves, right?
Okay.
Or me for sure, kind of thing. So do you actually believe that it was just a click where the human actually just decided that he was going to be smarter? Or were there some, I've come to understand that the only way, and this may be just from my young understanding, but the only way that we actually learn as individuals is through environment, senses, or 5 senses. Some of us have 6 senses. The whole, or some of us can, the pineal gland, and some of us can really, I guess my question would be is, and I know we're going off topic, but we don't have a topic. We're having coffee and you're enjoying yourself. And I hope you're enjoying some of the questions that I'm asking. So we're energy, and when we go on, to the other side, like your grandmother or my mother have, does that energy stop or does that energy transfer?
Well, I think it transfers, you know.
Okay, now that's interesting.
All of your ancestors having passed away, they still will be what some call the inner companion. So my father died 15 years ago, 16 years ago already. My mother died last year, but she's still there. She's still there. She's an inner companion. You think of her every day, and it never ends. So that's what I think. That's the difference of human beings. I would not be sure if, let's say, animals, but we wouldn't know either, remember their ancestors for so long as we do. So, but that makes him man a man, you know.
It's funny that you mentioned that. It's not until you really lose a loved one before you are able to exercise whatever that thing is that allow you to that statement that Elmar just mentioned. He said they're still there. That's very interesting, because if you make that statement to an individual that has never experienced that statement, then they will interpret what you said from a place of never experiencing it. So there is a judgment that comes after that interpretation of never experiencing, right?
Yep.
But it will take you on an individual level, because you can't be told what that means either.
Yeah.
You can't be told. This is not like 2 + 2 = 4. This is not a mathematic rhythm, right? However, you know that that's as real as you sitting here drinking that coffee at the same time. Whenever that experience happened, and it continues to flow with you, so you know that they're still there. So energy transfers. Really interesting.
Yeah. So
these are experiences, and I'm sorry not to cut you off. These are experiences that does not matter what part of the world that you live in. You can live in Germany and have that same experience. You can live in Texas, Oklahoma, Africa, Portugal. It does not matter where you live. These experiences are consistent.
This is definitely universal, and I don't want to brag, but I have been to many different countries, not all of them. I was in Africa, I was in China, Mexico, United States, very often, more than 30 states, Oklahoma now put on the map too. So, I also, of course, sometimes in Europe, I go traveling as a tourist, but actually I don't like that. I only want to go where I might know people, you know.
Yeah.
Even if be it that I knew them before and visit them, or just meet nice folks like Matt here and get to talk about the world. So, and that what makes, and if you come to that point, you will see that everybody is more or less the same. Everybody has the same questions, has the same emotions, wants to live a good life, but a good life too, in two senses, not just materialistic, but also being at ease with everything around. So, while Matt was bringing the coffee, I will jump in and talk a little bit about the Bluegrass Festival in Guthrie, Oklahoma. Yeah. Oklahoma has one native son here, I guess, goes by the name Byron Berline. He's a fiddle player, and he was one of the heroes of my musical youth in the 70s already. He's now 75, if I'm informed correctly, and living in Guthrie, and he is the center point of the Oklahoma bluegrass scene. So at this international festival, he always assembles bands from here, bands from all over the world. There was a Japanese band present. They don't even talk English, but they can sing bluegrass in English. So that's funny. They love it like me. This is always the first week of October. This time we had very they had good luck with the weather, because normally it should be mud and rain, but there was only a sprinkle one day. No, a beautiful, beautiful thing. And it's just about friendship, you know.
Yes.
Everybody loved that music. It was not just bluegrass, by the way. There was a lot of Western swing, you know, like way down yonder in the Indian nation, I ride my pony on a reservation in those Oklahoma hills where I've been born.
I didn't know that song, but I should be singing up.
Or other stuff like about here. So traditional Western music with steel guitar and all that. And so really nice. And you sit there on lawn chairs, which you put there and leave them for 3 days in a row. You can have everything sitting there, standing there, and nobody will take it away or steal it. That just doesn't happen. You know, there is security, but actually not needed. And that's what I like about this kind of music, because it's just friendship that you experience there. So case closed so far about Guthrie. Go there and go for it next year, 2020, first week of October.
Don't miss it, because it's pretty cool. Like Elmar said, music is the heart and the soul. It allows you to no matter where you're coming from. Like you said, there was Asians there who didn't even know English. And their music is still just as good. It's the tune.
So now let's save the world again.
Well, no. We can give a breather from that, because those are really, really, really interesting questions. And I kind of just, like I said, there's no telling which way we were going in the conversation. And we can pull ourselves out of that place anytime when we want to. I just want to get some perspective from you about just
no, it was really nice to talk about all that. And later than today, I want to go see Tallgrass Prairie up north here near Pawhuska, which will be and then Bartlesville. Well, I have some odd interests, you know, maybe, well, not odd, but like everybody. So I would say one of my scientific hobby is astronomy, doing that lunar eclipse photometry. Then music is important. I like to take photos. I always did, even in the old age with chemical film. So I visited the George Eastman house in Rochester, New York. It's so sad that Kodak folded, which was a very good company, American company.
Yeah, they just didn't diversify.
Yeah, they just didn't jump on the digital imaging train. Well, different story. And one other thing that I like is Frank Lloyd Wright's architecture. It somehow amazed me as a boy already when I saw pictures, and I saw this is so special. And it's so indigenously American in style, the prairie style of houses. Of course, mostly built for very super rich people, because nobody else could afford that. But these are masterpieces of art, you know. And it happens to be that in Bartlesville, Oklahoma, a little bit north of here, 25 miles, there is the only remaining, the only high-rise that Frank Lloyd Wright ever built, the Price Tower, and which I also have to see, because he had quite a few projects on his drawing desk of high-rises, even one being 1 mile high, the 1 mile high building he wanted to build with nuclear elevators and stuff like that. Well, we made it in Arabia. We had half a mile tower already. The Burj Al Arab, I think.
Have you ever been to Dubai?
No, never. Okay. But it's popular for Europeans, though. So that's a small high rise. Let's say, I think 19 stories or something like that. But it has that special Frank Lloyd Wright style, which actually was a blend of American influences and Japanese influences, because he was a big fan of Japanese culture, and he also had links to Germany. So it's a blend. But then what it turned out to be was just I would say the premier American architect. Frank Lloyd Wright, I think he almost
well known.
He got
very well known.
He got 100 almost, or something like that.
That's pretty cool.
Okay, well, just
no, I like this
as a diversion.
I like it. Well, I tell you what, you know, with all the traveling across the country that you've been able to see, and all the astronomy things that you've gotten to look into, I guess I'll just present a question that probably everyone will like to know. Have you ever seen aliens? Do you believe in aliens, and what are aliens?
Well, speaking of unidentified flying objects and stuff like that, it has to be seen that those people that observe the skies professionally, professional astronomers and amateur astronomers, hardly ever have seen something which they could not explain. The closest thing was something going through the air, which I was amazed at the moment, but later then found out that it was a bird lit from lights underneath his flight path. So no, I have never seen an alien or an unidentified flying object. And I think most of the sightings can be naturally explained. On the other hand, we have detected now, I think, several thousand exoplanets. So, and I listened to a talk recently in Heidelberg, Germany, by a professional astronomer who said that the chances have it that there is, on the average, at least one planet for every star in our galaxy. And our galaxy has 100 billion stars. Right. So imagine this, there will be 100 or at least several 100 billion planets out there. So I would say chances have it that there is life there also at some place. But we are isolated so much in the universe that traveling between different stars or planets is at the moment and for a long, long time totally out of the question. So, and maybe it would be better for us, because if we had an encounter with a more intelligent civilization, which could easily be the case, then they would maybe obliterate us. So, like has happened in human history, unfortunately, too, you know. So,
well, they could say we're just the monkeys down there that we don't want to interfere in because we're so self.
That's what sci-fi is about. Many sci-fi stories about alien invasions. So, but we are so totally isolated, and maybe that's for better. So, but I think there is there will be life.
So speaking of there being so many planets, Elon Musk actually recently just stated that he want to die on Mars in a Tesla.
Oh, really?
Yeah, he said I want to die on Mars in a Tesla. He's an interesting guy. I mean, he is, very, very interesting, especially in the physics world. You know, I mean, this gentleman, I mean, at SpaceX is a very, very new way of traveling in the subatmosphere and atmosphere, and also, you know, outer space. I really I think a lot of Elon, because he's taken old primitive ways of thinking about science and the universe and traveling, and he's put a new spin on it.
No, sure.
He's probably single-handedly is the cause of privatization of outer space exploration at this point.
Well, he definitely is the Carnegie of modern times, or what you would call, or Roosevelt, or just an inventor and immensely creative industry person. So we all rely on PayPal. I think that's
PayPal is how you got started.
PayPal was his first big thing, and nothing against it. He wants to make space travel cheaper and accessible for more people.
That would be pretty cool.
But still it will be very, you know, if you look at the energy balance of going into space, you have to get up to, I think, just about 19,000 miles per hour. So you need a lot of energy for doing that. So it will not be every man's travel. It will not be on everybody's traveling budget, I would say.
That speed that we don't comprehend. Like 747's cruising out to speed is around 400, 500 miles an hour. Is that correct?
Yeah.
And then Mach 1 is mathematician.
Yeah, well, it's Well, it's a little bit more, let's say 400 miles, 500, 5 to 600 miles per hour.
And so
6 to 700, yeah.
So that's just really, really, really fast. Here's something that I wanted to ask you before I, forget. I hate when that happens.
Yeah.
I know, right?
Was it about Musk or?
I was just thinking. No, it wasn't about Eli. I moved on from Eli. It was just your perspective on a couple other things. But so I'm really interested in this physics. You being a physicist, I'm really. Is it more the healthcare physicist where you spent your time, but you do like to speak on your time and observing. Well, so have you ever seen anything up close like the moon? They say have you had the opportunity to observe the moon from? I mean, the ones down in Mexico are really, really well known, right? The observatories.
Well, for my photometry, I only need a small handheld instrument, which just takes in the whole moon and then gives me a reading of the brightness. And there's a few unexplained things about the brightness. Basically, the bottom level of brightness during a lunar eclipse is ruled by the state of the high atmosphere, of the stratosphere. So this kind of work somehow is linked to, let's say, global change and so on. But it's still, there's many things are still not yet clear. So, and even the full moon's brightness is not known so well, which one should wonder about. But the astronomers, professional astronomers, go to so many very weak objects for which you have to use huge telescopes. The moon is much too bright. The moon would saturate every detector, would destroy every detector of a professional. It's too bright.
Wow.
And
so the moon is like a sun, like a.
Well, not quite so. Okay. It gets its light from the sun, but it's so bright that any professional detector of a big telescope would be immediately destroyed. Well, and so that's why nobody works on the moon anymore. But it's just me.
Do you believe in global warming?
Yes. Okay. It's getting warmer now. But the question is, how much is produced by humans and not? So I would not be totally sure about that. There will be a part of it because we.
So let me ask you a question. From being 65, have you ever sat down and just looked at the information that's been presented to you on both sides of the equation? Those who have said there's no such thing as global warming, and those who have said there is global warming. And you've analyzed and critiqued your information through your experiences of observation. And all of those, and that comes from environment, that's coming from travel, that comes from reading, that comes from mathematical, factually. Like have you ever sat down and said, that's bullshit, global warming exists?
No.
Or have you said, that's bullshit, global warming does not exist?
No, neither. Okay. The problem is science doesn't work by a vote. So even if, let's say, if 90% of the scientists would say global warming is man-made, then it still might turn out that the other 10% are right. It still might,
Very good point.
You never can, because science never, for being accepted scientifically, there has to be an agreement. But I have to say 90% is not enough. For instance, like Einstein was in when he came up with his theories of relativity, he was very much under attack, and in the very first few years,
amongst the community,
there was a strong opposition, and so many would have thought or said Einstein is not correct. But then the balance turned completely. So at the latest,
it's a lagger
in the mid 20s, that case was closed. Sure. But well, this is about something much simpler. It's because special relativity only deals with masses moving in space, and time, and the general relativity is just about how space is made up. And this is a simple thing, relative. It's complicated in the equations, but it's just one thing. And weather and climate is such a multifactorial issue that you cannot have a poll on that somehow. So we should be careful about watching. That it would be like we could discuss about tomorrow's weather.
Yeah,
today should be a nice day.
Yeah, you're right.
But what about tomorrow? Would we know? It should be changing where there is a chance of this and that, but you never can tell how it is really. So it was raining here, as your wife told me yesterday, but it was not raining in Oklahoma City.
It's really interesting. That's so true.
So
that's true. That's true. So where's that information coming in?
The problem I want to take
is localized.
As a scientist, I would want to take the heat of that discussion. There is many factors on climate, and the human mankind is a very important one already, and it's, I tell in a minute why. But of course, we do not understand the sun completely. We do not understand cosmic radiation effects. So actually, there is sort of alternative science and facts to say that about the influence of cosmic radiation on cloud formation and so on. It's a minority opinion, I have to say that. But I would not advocate climate change so strongly as to be purely man-made. The real problem is, and that's my point, we are too many. Mankind is too many. We are about we grew to about 7.5 billion people on the Earth.
Okay, and I was going to jot down notes, but there's so many topics. I love that you're sitting here. just no, because I'm really interested in a couple of things that you just mentioned, and I want us to just mull over them.
Yeah.
And okay, so
sure, yeah.
So population.
Yeah. So this is in teaching I did a few back of the envelope calculations. Okay. How much land is there on Earth? What is the productivity of the best agricultural land that you could have, which would be probably China, because China always had to feed the most people in the world as a country. So
India.
India will surpass China in a few years, I think. Okay. But so if you do that back of the envelope calculation, one would find out that the Earth cannot sustain more than 15 billion people. We are now 7.5. We are only a factor of 2 away. And if the population grows like that, we would probably reach 15 billion around 2100 or something like that, 2100, 2150.
So you're familiar with this calculation?
Yes.
So what that means is eugenics is going to be, it's going to come to a point to where it's necessary.
You think so? Well,
I'm asking. If the tipping point is 17 billion or 15 billion, and we're going to reach that in less than 100 years, what are we actually saying?
Well, I would have to add, do we want an Earth like that with 15 billion people? I would say no, we do not want it, because what would it look like? Then every unused spot of land would be agriculturally used. There would not be any, let's say, big game or other animals living around. We would have to rely on fertilizers. We would have to rely on energy, be it fossil fuels or nuclear or whatever. So no, my point is, in principle, 15 billion could be fed, but the Earth would not be the same. If you now get back to calculate what would be sustainable without fossil fuels, oil, coal.
By the way, he did say 15 billion. At this point, we have surpassed 7.5,
Yeah,
pushing 8 billion.
Yeah,
We're pushing 8. I've heard calculations of being north of 8.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. So if you come to how many people the Earth could sustain by just using solar power, which also includes wind power and everything that grows, so without all, then in history it was before the Industrial Revolution, the Earth never had more than 500 million people. 500 million.
500 million is an interesting point. I don't know why he just stated 500 million, and see the smirk on the side of his face right now. There's actual science that's based on the 500 million theory. Like there's a lot of scientists and individuals of power believe that, well, there's a small circle. Let's just say there's a small circle that believes 500 million is it's supposed to be on the Georgia Guidestones. I don't know if you're familiar with that.
No.
So there's an actual place that states, it's called the Georgia Guidestones. Please take the time and research that.
Okay.
But the Georgia Guidestones state that the Earth population for a utopia like world should be based around 500 million. And 500 million is the actual number that is used.
That's what it always had been. I would give a little bit of leeway, however, because that was the old Earth with old technology. They didn't have modern technology. So if we could combine the best of modern technology with a completely sustainable environment, I would expect, let's say, the Earth to carry about 1.5 to 2.5 billion people. That would be a very good number, in my opinion. But and of course, it is to be seen that the population stops to increase in the developed countries like the US or Europe and even China. So big problem being Africa, of course, because predictions have it that they will triple in population in the next 100 years.
Well, that's mostly because Asia is actually flooding into Africa for their resources. It's not the population of Africa itself. It's because Africa is one of now the most well, it's one of the most easiest countries to be able to dominate when it comes to manufacturing and production. So Asia is flooding into Africa. So Asia being plus 3 billion, it's flooding down into Africa and capitalizing on the cheap resources right now, which is something that most countries are doing because most developed countries are doing. And the reason why they're doing that is because this is back to my basic premise of the real estate channel. There just isn't once you obtain land, it's yours, right? But the earth isn't producing more land. So
the question is basically
it's land grab. Yeah, it's a land grab.
So the question is basically we have to somehow get over the hill and reach better numbers. Let's say 3 to 5 billion at first. So the world population has to go down some way. I hope peacefully, and then the rest of the problems will be much more easily solved. But we cannot have both. We cannot have sustain 15 billion people and hope to escape climate change. That won't happen.
Okay, so lead me into my next question. What are the conversations that are currently most popular outside of media, close quarter? What are because we're talking about a real problem, and we're talking about a numerical mathematical fact. What are the actual conversations that are being tossed around in order to control that potential problem? Because if you know the problem, you also got to know.
I don't see much about that. The problem is that our politicians, they all want to be reelected of whatever party they would be belonging to, and so they even if they say even if they speak differently, But I think most of them would only think about the next term.
Right, and but
so that's a problem.
That's one of my questions. But I want to try to vet this as far as I can outside of going into talk of government, because government kind of work very TV-ish.
Yeah, sure.
And I'm pretty rare when my degree is actually political science.
Okay.
I would rather try to take this. We'll try to go long ways around. So I want to know, like, in the scientific community, because the scientific community work outside of government.
Yes, yeah.
So in the scientific community, what are some of the ideas that are tossed around in dealing with population control at this point?
Difficult. I don't see that subject being really
like China implemented the one-child policy, right?
Well, which is only possible in an authoritarian state, so to speak. So if China and India are just a good way to compare what is it about democracy and an authoritarian state. So I wouldn't be sure whether we would.
So we're gonna give me 1 second. We're gonna introduce another character. This is Matt Jr. We're gonna bring him over and bring him in. But one of the things I want to leave off this question with is that if so China have tried to, because they're growing so fast, they've tried to mitigate these issues to an extent. For an example, they implemented the one-child policy. In doing so, they started to experience what is called infanticide. It's the killing of or the death rate, or you can call it whatever you want, but it was infanticide of the female child. And now one of China's biggest issues today is the overproduction of males.
India's the same.
And those males, India's the same. And here's the interesting part. They implemented that policy more than about 15, almost 20 years ago. Now those males are coming to puberty. And now they're having to either figure out ways to send them. It's a huge problem.
They have to go to Vietnam or Thailand for finding women.
And the reason being is because their rape numbers amongst young males, kids, and the females have blown out of proportion. Are we doing bad on time?
Oh yeah, we're good. Yeah,
we're good on time.
Okay, yeah.
I'm gonna. If it's okay, come on, Dave.
Yeah. So
it's okay.
Processes like that, I think, cannot be controlled. They will have to happen on their own. And like in all developed countries, families get smaller. Like Germany doesn't grow anymore. Speaking of the own population, the United States is still different because it's a country of much more vast spaces and resources. Germany doesn't have these. But I think in a while, the population will have to will stop by itself. It's nothing which can actively being controlled. And well, in the worst case, hunger and famine, and in the very worst case, I think even wars would.
You got it, Barbara.
Yeah. So would be coming into play, which would be a bad thing. But I fear that mankind doesn't have.
So that's something really interesting about resources.
Sort of a good control on itself.
Yeah, that's really interesting when you mention about resources. And have we met a plateau where, and that's a whole nother conversation, which we obviously don't have the time to discuss, but what has happened is through the amazing benefit of the pharmaceuticals and the amazing benefit of current day health, individuals aren't dying anymore when they're 40, and Black Plague is less common. Ebola is less common, for which at that time, those diseases and stuff wiped out entire, areas. And so basically our death rate is not, I guess our production rate is. But here's another scary issue that takes place that is dictated. I'm glad I have this expert here. Here's another, what is amongst some in the United States, and please listen to what I'm about to say. Amongst some groups, this is one of the most scary problems when it comes to reproduction and death tolls. One being specifically minorities performing and out producing than Anglos and Caucasians. Factually, Anglos and Caucasians in America is on a negative projection. And a lot of people believe, well, a very few of well-read and well-studied individuals believe that this could be partial, one of the most important issues when it comes to, or this is the real reason behind the immigration policy that currently exists in America, because Hispanics are reproducing at 1.52% rates faster than what other minorities are reproducing. So if you don't control the reproduction of minorities, meaning Hispanics, Blacks, Asians, and everyone else, then the Anglo-Caucasian race will be no longer the majority in the United States. They will soon become the minority. The original projections were around 2044, and because of bad math and lack of reality, the projections have been cut down very significantly with what those numbers look like in surpassing. And that's the reason why you can see Trump like also, you know, addressing issues like it ain't just the adults. He wants the kids out of the country too. And because kids grow into adults and kids produce. With that being said, I want to ask you just a few more questions. We have really gone on for an hour, and I really do appreciate your time. And I know some of these questions are less entertaining or less happy to talk about than bluegrass.
Sure,
but I do appreciate your perspective.
Okay, very good. Yeah.
What would a government look like with a 1.5 billion to 500 million population? What would a government like that look like?
World government, you think?
Weird government.
World
Government. It'll be world government.
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, it would be. That makes sense to me.
Would be better in the
It'll be easy
because all that fighting and all that crazy stuff, you know, and fears must come to an end. We are so overstocked with nuclear weapons that we could overkill mankind a couple of times, and that has to go somehow. But what I definitely would not want, because that was like the Greek. I think Plato, the philosopher, was thinking about a philosopher's republic, or let's say a scientific government. So I think some scientists would like to be at the controls of everything, which is not okay. So scientists can have their say and should have their say, but they should, in my opinion, not be entitled to, let's say, control the political theater, because in the long end this will lead to dictatorship. So we have to go on, elect our politicians, have to elect good politicians, have to elect good guys, good folks, and look at what they have to offer. And of course, since the Tower of Babylon, you know, or how is it, Babel? You know,
that's exactly how it's pronounced. You're correct.
Babylon? Babylon. Since the Tower of Babylon, the biggest problem is the language diversity. But that will be, so Elon Musk and folks like him, I think they're working on that. In the future, you would just use your smartphone and talk something. It is already there, and it will be immediately translated.
Yeah, sure.
So we can talk English, really, which is good, because I had to use it all my life.
That's a good point.
Rather good, I would say. But the problem is that with many people, especially like, let's say, the Chinese, or you just cannot talk to them like we do.
Yeah.
And that's the biggest barrier. And this, I think this would be a mega project for the future, to have immediate translation present for everyone, let's say like a speaker, and then the world would be a much better place.
Well, I plan on teaching my son Mandarin.
Okay,
yeah, he's going to take simply because the numerical numbers, like we're talking about, it's going to be extremely important in the future.
So, I think before we come to such a one-world government, we have to cross the language barriers, which is for most people is just too high, you know.
Well, you know, politics in different parts of the world, then you have to still have to bring Sunni and Shiites together, and that's one of the oldest wars in the known world. How do you bring? I mean, you can have common language, but still, I mean, then you still have the God complex. So how do you get around who God is to
you mean the religions, or?
Well, then you still have the opposition of different religions, religions. You know, there's different facts in Muslim community that has been warring. Yeah. Well, you have some things that is real.
Well, for me, that this is I can escape that, because for me, as we said before, it is not such a point. So you only and for most scientists it isn't. So at least in this respect, science is.
So you think scientists should rule the world?
No, I said the opposite. Because
they should not rule the world.
Because they would not have that would not be a legitimate. Science is not good for. Science is good for understanding and for teaching and everything, but not for it. It's not legitimized, like a people's vote.
Do you think we should have a different political system than the one that currently exists throughout? Well, I guess because you're kind of touting the one world government, right? Maybe.
It's difficult because to answer that question, because I think. Speaking of Germany and maybe also a little bit about the US, the political system now is too much short-term.
It's definitely.
So 4 years is not enough.
They speak to people in sound bites now.
4 years is much too short.
It's crazy
to create something.
You're not creating it. You're just destroying everything that the person previous.
First, you have to get into office, get used to it for a year, and then you can maybe.
Who comes into an office?
You can govern 1 or 2 years, and then you will be
getting ready to leave,
campaigning again.
And you got to have all your stuff packed up just in case you don't get elected.
That's the same as the case in. So I believe in
the founding fathers did it that way purposely, though, because they didn't believe in tyranny. They didn't believe in someone getting in office and becoming settled, because at that point they start to become more tyrannical and tyrannical. Well, let me ask you a couple of questions. Well, to obtain, Machiavelli said, it's all about power. To seek power, obtain power, and stay in power. Let me ask a couple of questions real quick. Can you see pollution you can see the pollution up when you're looking through a telescope? Can you see pollution?
Oh, yes, yeah.
You can see pollution?
You can see the aerosols getting to the atmosphere, that definitely can be measured. We have all the fluorinated carbon compounds. They are under control, however, now. But of course, that can be measured to very
well. Can you see it through a telescope?
No, it has to be used. You have to use spectrometers and special apparatuses
to see pollution,
to detect them. Yeah.
So you can't see pollution.
The run-of-the-mill pollution like dust, or you can of course see that. Of course, when it's smoke and dust, that will blur the sky. So, but the astronomers, of course, go to places like Hawaii or Chile where you don't have that. Yeah. So professional astronomy can only be done in places like Hawaii, Chile, or the Canary Islands, and so there is very little of pollution. Our congested parts of the country, it is there, of course.
Last question.
Yeah.
Last question.
Okay.
This is my serious last question, and I'm serious when I ask this question.
Nobody will want to watch for an hour, maybe, or
they're gonna love this.
Really?
Okay. They will love this one.
Well,
last question: is the Earth round or flat?
It is round for sure.
Thank you.
Thank you, Matt.
Hey, thanks, guys. Y'all have a good one.
Bye-bye.
Unless, Elmar, you want to take us away and with the banjo playing one more time?
Okay?
Okay.
But you don't have. Do you have your guitar pick?
Let me see if I can find the guitar pick. Thanks, guys, for tuning. Well, let me find a guitar.
Because I could then play three finger style.
I definitely find it.
The thumb pick.
When you get back to Buffalo, I want you to make sure you tune in to.
Yeah, sure. I'll give you my email address, and then
this video is gonna go public as soon as.
Well, oh really?
Yeah.
You have so many
right now, so.
How many followers did you have that you said? See, now it's really getting rowdy here. But
we have the guitar and it's Fender.
No. What I meant is, I can.
Oh, okay.
I would need something going here.
Oh, your finger pick.
You don't have that.
Finger pick. No.
Let me see if I can put that on a sum, but because I lost them at a festival, maybe that works here. Yeah, maybe.
And I'm gonna grab Junior, and we're gonna enjoy.
Try something here, but I think maybe it works like that.
I hope you enjoyed that interview. It's
Definitely.
A little weird, but weird is good.
No, I can't do that. I would need that other pick. So let's keep it like it was,
okay.
Because it will be bad then. But I will play for him a little bit. Yeah, I have to get back to playing, but you being a guitar player, the setup on that banjo is incredibly good. See, look at the action here.
Yes,
it's
real
it's
straight.
Very even and low.
That's right.
With the whole
straight. I've seen that. Yeah.
Thing without any buzzing.
Frets are beautiful, man. Yeah.
That's stainless steel frets.
Oh, it's fantastic.
It's fresh and.
Hey guys, thank you for tuning in with us. We'll see you guys next time.
Okay, bye. So very good.
Dude, this was the coolest.